The Vietnam War, it's over. Your job's just begun.
A new HBO original limited series.
Welcome to the world of spycraft. Strap in.
From executive producers Park Chan-wook and Robert Downey Jr.
What are you concealing?
Based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by Viet Thanh Nguyen.
What if I told you that I was a communist spy?
How did you become this?
The Sympathizer, streaming April 14th on Max. Subscription required.
Hey there! Did you know Kroger always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower-than-low prices? And when you download the Kroger app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Kroger today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Hey everyone, Jay here from There Can Only Be One. As podcasters, it's good practice to record a bunch of episodes in advance so you can maintain consistency and have a decent back catalog. But every now and then, something happens between the time you record and the time that you release the episode. This is one of those times. We recently heard of the passing of CJ Snare, lead singer of Firehouse, due to complications from cancer. Our thoughts and well wishes go out to his family and friends, as well as to the entire Firehouse fan base. Please know that we are releasing this episode not just as a way to talk about the music of Firehouse and what it meant to us, but also as a celebration of life for CJ Snare. If you wish to donate to the cancer societies in your country, in North America, in the US, you can go to cancer.org and donate there. In Canada, you can go to cancer.ca and donate as well. Thank you for this. And now let's get on with the show and celebrate the music from the debut album of Firehouse. Hey everyone, welcome to this edition of Spin, Shuffle, Skip on the There Can Only Be One podcast channel, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Now here on Spin, Shuffle, Skip, we like to mix things up every now and then, and for the first time, we're getting a little glammy because we are talking about the self-titled debut album from none other than Firehouse. And here to join me for a glamtastic time, fellow Pantheon podcaster Brian Colburn from My Weekly Mixtape. Brian, it's your first time on Spin Shuffle Skip. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, man. I feel like I've done every other show. So at this point, actually, no, I haven't done every single one, but I'm catching up slowly but surely here.
Little by little. I think you're about to keep watch pass away and a grading on a curve behind everybody else, but we'll get you there. We will get you there.
Yeah, I think those are the two. You're exactly right. But I'm looking forward to throwing my hairband horns up for this one.
So when we were discussing trying to come up with which album to talk about today, and I said, well, you know what? How about some Firehouse? Because you had mentioned something about maybe a little hair metal. So I ask you, how big was the hair in the 90s for you?
Well, you see, the problem is the way my hair looks now, for the people that don't know me personally, my hair grows up and out. It never goes down. Gravity does not help it. So as much as during that time I wanted to have long hair, it just kept going straight up in the air.
So it was more like a new wave band than a glam metal band for you.
Oh God, yeah. No matter how much I headbanged, it just stayed in its place. It knew its role, apparently.
I'm just now trying to picture the number of people in danger of your headbanging and hairspray was involved.
None for me. But I did try to grow it long in the back. God, it's so embarrassing. Like, I'm so glad that pictures of my 8th and 7th grade years are not on the internet, because I kind of had that duck's ass going in the back that was trying to grow long and it didn't quite get there. I don't know about you, but I also at some point around 7th or 8th grade, I did the rat tail as well. That's one that was definitely a product of its time.
I never did the rat tail. I escaped that one, but I would be lying if I said that I did not embrace my inner Kawasaki 4x4 and have a little bit of the mullet going on. The party in the business in the front, party in the back.
There you go.
Which kudos to Kawasaki for making mullet jokes during the Super Bowl. I definitely appreciate.
Stone Cold with a mullet is something I don't think I'll ever get out of my mind. So yeah.
I just need him to now take that picture and change his social media avatars to that. Just that. But let's get to business here. We're about to talk about Firehouse's self-titled debut album. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick 3 songs each off of this album. A spin, a shuffle, and a skip. The spin is the track that when this disc goes in, it's probably the first one that we hit play on. The shuffle is one that, you know what, if it comes on, it's on the radio, it's on shuffle play, we're good. We're good. The skip is one that either we would skip on traditionally or, like some albums, it's just the least liked one because the album is all killer, no filler. It's however you interpret skip, but usually one that maybe the last one that you play on the album. But let's talk about this album. Released August 20th in 1990 in Japan and September 11th, 1990 in the US. The band at this point is CJ Snare on vocals, Bill Leverty on guitar, Perry Richardson on bass, and Michael Foster on drums. The album hit number 21 on the Billboard 200. It is double platinum in the US, gold in Canada, Japan, and Singapore. There were 4 singles off of this one. Love of a Lifetime charted the highest, reaching number 5 in the US. And I actually know at least one couple that had this as their wedding song. So this was a big song for them.
Oh, this was definitely one of my 8th grade dance tunes. I vividly remember slow dancing to Love of a Lifetime at my 8th grade dance. So that song holds special meanings for me. But again, at that point, power ballads were still, I know it's 1990 and everybody automatically assumes, oh, it's the 90s, grunge was here. No. We still had another year to go before grunge really hit it big. 1990 is just as much of that 80s hair band scene as 87, 88, and 89. Even 91, there was still the tail of the hair bands. It wasn't until 92 that they really started to fall off the map, at least on the charts and on MTV per se.
Yeah. The of the moment glam bands started to fade away. The bigger glam bands started to go a little bit heavier and the music landscape changed. But let's talk about this album. Brian, off of the self-titled Firehouse debut, what is your spin pick?
I got to go with Don't Treat Me Bad. This was the single that got me into the band. I love the acoustic guitar opening. I love the fact that it's a little poppier, but it's still heavy. I love the riff that it's almost a play on Boston's More Than a Feeling. So it has that classic rock nature to it. And it's just one of those songs that every time it comes on, no matter what, if it's on my phone on random, or if I'm listening to Firehouse front to back, this one always puts a smile on my face. His vocals are just impeccable. And he has that Boston-esque Brad Delp delivery where he can hit those high notes with just effortless ease. And this song was definitely a product of that hairband scene. And it's probably, God, one I've used on more hairband mixtapes as a kid all the way through now. It's just a staple for me.
And the thing is, it's still, for those who like that era of music, it's still pretty popular. If you go and watch the Peacemaker TV series, this song was actually used, if memory serves, it was used on episode 2 of that series. And if you like hair metal, just go watch that series for the music that they use alone, because there is a wide swath of eras of hair metal from current, including the theme song from Wigwam, all the way back to Choir Boys and Firehouse. And there's some good stuff on that soundtrack, or at least through that series.
That is a show that is on my must check out list. I'm not going to lie. I haven't seen it yet. And I'm kind of bummed about it because I loved his turn as Peacemaker in the Suicide Squad. So
yeah, you will not be disappointed. It is actually one of the best things the DCEU put out prior to this past year. Because, yeah, this past year didn't do the DC any favors whatsoever. But Peacemaker, absolutely. For my spin song, I had to go with one of their other singles. Actually, the last one that they put out as a single, that was All She Wrote. So let me explain why this song kind of hits me. And you and I have talked about this before, how, being in television and being in video production, music videos really kind of did something for me. And there was that stretch where live music videos were absolutely the big thing. Like basically anything Wayne Isham directed for Bon Jovi and whatnot, like live videos were it. So this video, filmed at the O.C. Tanner Amphitheater in Springdale, Utah. So outdoor venue in the desert. It was killer. It was fun. And the other thing too is that just because of that, I was a white noise sleeper. So when I was in high school, I would always put on music, and as I'm drifting off to sleep, I would actually start to dream about actually playing these songs in an arena because I wanted to be that rock star. Never got to be that kind of rock star, but I guarantee you there was probably once or twice that this song came on, I was picturing myself on that stage in Springdale, Utah. Never happened, never gonna happen. Maybe one day. But for me, this song, it's a killer hit. Like it's straight driving all the way through.
To me, the thing that got me the most excited about All She Wrote was, in fact, the vocal harmonies. The opening of the song, when they all hit that chorus together before it kicks in, I just friggin' love it. These guys could sing, and the vocal harmonies were pretty much the key to this song working the way it did. And this was one of those ones that actually crossed the 91 threshold, because this was the last single from the album, and it wasn't released until 91. So this was right at the cusp of Nirvana breaking onto the scene and Pearl Jam and the whole Seattle grunge scene coming into play. And to me, this was one of those last songs, like the, dare I use the term, calm before the storm being the grunge movement. I vividly remember this song being all over radio, and it's one of the best on the album as far as I'm concerned, but I don't want to give too many spoilers away.
I will say too that if you think about the music, at least, bands of the hair metal era needing to harden their sound, and all you have to do is take a listen to Warrant's Dog Eat Dog album for a feel for that. But this song was hard enough that I think even this carried through that 1991 and was able to sit into that pocket of the music that was starting to get a little bit heavier. Yeah,
they, again, were bridging that gap. Around this time, you had albums like Firehouse self-titled, Extreme 2's Porno Graffiti, where there was this, is it really hair band? Is it hard rock? Is it pop? There was a blend because, again, Extreme's Porno Graffiti had the More Than Words power ballad that really exploded them onto the pop charts. But the album also had songs like Decadence Dance and Get the Funk Out that leaned more towards the heavier side of things. And Firehouse's self-titled was, again, bridging that gap. Unfortunately, along with bands like Winger and stuff like that, these type of bands became the butt of what the grunge scene seemed to be going after. And I was always shocked about that, because even at the height of the grunge movement, I still had a ton of admiration and respect for the hair bands that were still out there, and they were still putting out great stuff. And I vividly remember mixtapes in the early 90s for me having both. You had mentioned Dog Eat Dog, so I'll just say Machine Gun by Warrant, and let's just go with Smells Like Teen Spirit from Nirvana on the same tape.
Take a look at Skid Row's Slave to the Grind. That album, going from that first album to Slave to the Grind, like that is a definite shift towards the heavier. And even Warrant before Dog Eat Dog, his Uncle Tom's Cabin had kind of that All She Wrote driving feel to it.
Uncle Tom's Cabin could be my favorite ever hairband song. And I know Warrant removed themselves, or tried to, from Dog Eat Dog on, from that stigma. But when you talk about that classic 80s, late 80s hard rock hairband, whatever you want to call it, Uncle Tom's Cabin is probably one of my all-time favorites from that era. It's just a perfect hard rock song. I love that one so much.
But enough Warren talk here. Well, let's get back to Firehouse for
seriously.
a second. My shuffle pick. I'm glad you mentioned Extreme's Porno Graffiti album, because my shuffle pick is Shake and Tumble, which, as I was listening to this again, this song, and this was actually the very first single from them and just didn't chart, has a very extreme feel to it.
It certainly does. There's that groove that you talk about with Extreme's music. And if you're not an Extreme fan, you might not quite get what I mean, but there was a hard rock groove that they were able to lock into on the first and second album. And Firehouse was right there with that same vibe. The riff is amazing. This is tied for my shuffle pick from the album. And it's just an awesome tune. Shocked, believe it or not, that it didn't move the needle at all. I think it might have been a mistake to lead with that, because if you led with Don't Treat Me Bad, followed it up with Love of a Lifetime, dropped All She Wrote third, and then Shake and Tumble as the fourth single, easily it would have been a smash. I think this was just a matter of which one caught fire. I feel like they almost should have re-released Shake and Tumble, because it's just that good of a song. Deserves to be a single. Terrible timing on where it was released.
Yeah. I was tossing it between this and Lover's Lane off of this as well, because that had a fun little almost skip beat to the drums on that one. But Shake and Tumble, just even the syncopated rhythms, again, very, very Porno Graffiti. But off of this, what's your shuffle pick?
You mentioned it earlier, All She Wrote. I know I'm picking two singles, but this is, again, in the this is the early 90s, but in the early 90s when this album dropped, mixtapes with friends were a lot of the hits. So Don't Treat Me Bad and All She Wrote got a lot of spins for me. And the fact that both of the songs are so good that they never got old is why I have them in these two positions. They just never got old to me. When they come on now, I'm whisked right back to 1990, and I'm never sick of it. I don't ever want to skip over it.
All right. So now we get to our skip song. And again, I say skip only because it's the name of the show. So what is your quote unquote skip song off of this?
I swear to God, I'm not bouncing off words you just say with this album, but unfortunately, when push comes to shove, I had to take Lover's Lane as my skip, not because of the music. I actually love the music. The thing that made me choose it for this choice, we're going down, down, down to Lover's Lane. That's where she drives me insane. I was 11 years old, and even at 11 years old, I went, well, that's kind of cheesy. And I know I wasn't the demographic for that song. That song was for the hard rock ladies. However, it just missed the mark for me lyrically. I just thought it was a little too on the nose, so to speak. And when I was listening to the entire album earlier today to kind of decide, as soon as that line came on, I went, okay, I know which one I'm picking. It's not because of the music. It's not a bad song. It's just, it's kind of, I don't want to be mean. It's a little Dr. Seussy, but that's,
I was getting that vibe off of Ought to Be a Law, because as I'm listening to it and there's these little, talk to the crowd kind of moments, I'm like, oh, David Lee Roth called. He wants his shtick back. But the thing is, musically, both of those songs are actually quite good. But yeah, I can see if you're picking based on the lyrics, I can see why Lover's Lane would be a skip pick for sure. For me, my skip song is one that I wish it was done a little bit differently. And that's Home Is Where the Heart Is.
Okay.
So it starts with this kind of soft keyboard swell, and then it goes into this almost slow picking guitar riff, and then it just kicks into a mid-tempo song. I have a feeling that if you took this song, redid it as more of an acoustic country campfire kind of vibe, I think that song would then hit. But the way it is now, it doesn't. The other thing too for this song is that there's a part in the song where I'm like, you just took the same phrasing out of All She Wrote at this part. You're basically copying yourself on the same, and they're not the only band to do it. I mean, fans of Iron Maiden will sit there and say, well, yes, Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter, the pre-chorus going into the chorus is basically the pre-chorus of Wasted Years. It's the same little riff. Here, you're doing that on your debut album. And on the same album, at least Wasted Years and Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter were on different albums. But I just wish this song had a different iteration to make it a little bit better.
Now, was it a copy, or were they calling back All She Wrote in a very meta moment of the album that just went over your head?
I don't think this album's that smart.
Honestly, I think you hit the nail on the head, though. If Home Is Where the Heart Is took a page out of Cinderella's Heartbreak Station album and recorded it using that kind of sound and that kind of vibe, the quote unquote heavier acoustic sound, a little bit more Rolling Stones, a little bit less of the glam metal era, I think you can make it a better song. I do feel like Firehouse does have that dreaded little dip in the middle of the album where it's not as strong. It definitely starts off between Rock on the Radio, All She Wrote, Shake and Tumble, Don't Treat Me Bad, Ought to Be a Law. It's like boom, 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 boom. Lover's Lane gets a little, Home Is Where the Heart Isn't, but then it starts picking back up with Don't Walk Away. And then obviously the crescendo of Love of a Lifetime followed with the encore of Helpless. There's definitely that mid-album dip a little bit, I think. At least based on our picks, it certainly is.
Now, you picked up on something here, and I'm going to ask you this because you may have listened to a few albums in your time. You know, just a few.
One or two.
You know,
Firehouse and like one other. Yeah.
Something like that. When you're listening to an album, would you rather an album have basically like a sandwich where the meat's in the middle and you kind of ease in and then ease out? Or would you rather have like the reverse sandwich, or if you're K-Fry, the double down where you got chicken instead of bread, where it's all meat at the front, all meat at the end, and then kind of a dip in the middle?
I think I would go with that one. Because to me, you know how much I love album openers. And if the album opener doesn't punch me in the face, I may never get to track 2, 3, 4. So I'd rather get hit right from the beginning. And then if there is a little bit of a dip towards the center, I'll use Poison's Flesh and Blood as an example. I love the entire album, but Come Hell or High Water to me is just one of those songs that it's not bad. It's not brilliant. It works on the album, but yeah, it's a dip compared to what just happened before that. And yes, I'm including Unskinny Bop in that. I like that song. Don't at me.
Oh, that's a great song. It's a fun song.
That's one of the songs that made me want to play bass. Just seeing Bobby Dahl leaning up against the wall, just doom, 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 doom. Like, I love that song. Yes, the lyrics are pretty much in the same vein as Lover's Lane, but with Poison, it was almost expected of them to do that. And I feel like Unskinny Bop made the fans that expected the nothing but a good time goofiness of the band be present on Flesh and Blood, where the rest of the album, they got a little bit more mature. But Unskinny Bop was the first single to lure people in. And then the rest of the album kind of evolved around it. Does that make sense?
Well, considering Poison really got famous to start with Talk Dirty to Me. So they kind of set the bar at that point. And I think that's the thing too, and probably why a song like Lover's Lane didn't sit as well with you, because with songs like All She Wrote and Don't Treat Me Bad, yeah, they were fun, but it's not like they were very innuendo filled. Whereas a song like Ought to Be a Law or Lover's Lane kind of fell into that, you know, Poison-esque influence lyrically, at least.
Yeah, and for me, Poison was my first concert, so they're always going to get a pass as a band. Like I've respected everything they've done because they were my first concert. When the lights went out and the band came out on stage, like I'll never forget that moment. And it was Poison, and they opened for David Lee Roth. So it was an amazing first concert in 1988. And to me, I always think of Poison more as the Let It Play Valley of Lost Souls, Life Loves a Tragedy band than I do the Unskinny Bop Talk Dirty to Me band.
Oh, there's so many good songs. Like even the ones that are kind of lesser known, like a song like So Tell Me Why. Freaking
oh my
killer
God, I love
song.
That song. That is one of my absolute favorites. I dealt with the terrible production of Swallow This Live to get to those 4 bonus studio tracks. And when I say terrible production, I have this pet peeve about live albums. And Garth Brooks did this on Double Live, and a lot of bands in the 80s did this. And Jason, when have you ever been to a concert where the entire show, throughout the entire song, everyone's just going, I don't know what it was about 80s live albums. I even want to say Slaughter did this on Stick It Live, where they just put this bed of screaming under the entire song, where nobody apparently was listening to the damn music being played. It was just this bed of screaming, and it's on Swallow This Live, and it kills the mix to me. I wish they would pull it out and just let the songs be, because they're great performances on that album. It's just, I can't not hear that crowd screaming. It was glass breaking for me when I first got the 2 CD set.
I would be curious if anyone wants to break Brian now that we know, your kryptonite here. Here's the goal. Take that canned crowd concert noise and mix it in with Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, Ruin Johnny's Bar Mitzvah. Mix them together. You have broken Brian.
Yes, completely shattered. I won't be able to recover from that. Please don't.
All right. Before we re-go through our list so you guys know which songs that we picked, I want to remind you that if you want to hear the songs that we have just talked about, and the rest of the album for that matter, we're going to put the entire Spotify link for this album on our website at notthatbadcast.com. So just go to the episode page. Underneath the link for the episode that you're listening to right now, you're going to see the playlist of the entire album. Go listen to it and let us know what songs you would have picked for your spin, shuffle, and skip picks. All right, Brian, before we go, remind our listeners what songs made your list.
My spin was Don't Treat Me Bad. My shuffle was All She Wrote. And my skip was Lover's Lane.
All right, for me, my spin was All She Wrote. My shuffle was Shake and Tumble. And my skip is Home is Where the Heart Is. Brian, before we go, please remind our listeners where they can find you and My Weekly Mixtape.
You can find My Weekly Mixtape anywhere on social media at My Weekly Mixtape. You can also head to myweeklymixtape.com to browse all the different episodes of the show that are out there. And then My Weekly Mixtape can be found by searching, you've guessed it, My Weekly Mixtape anywhere you're listening to podcasts. If you're listening to There Can Only Be One right now, whatever that place is you're listening, My Weekly Mixtape is there as well. Tune in. Love to have you.
Brian, thank you so much for this. And to you, our listeners, thank you. Now, you guys know the drill. If there is an album that you want us to cover, hit us up on social media at OnlyOneCast or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com. And while you're there, make sure you check out our coming soon page so you can see all the episodes that we're prepping right now to record. We want to hear your chime-ins and your shout-outs so we can actually thank you and mention you on the show. Until next time, he's Brian. I'm Jay. You guys are awesome. This is Spin Shuffle Skip on the There Can Only Be One podcast channel, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Take care.